Today we're going to talk about geoengineering. Geoengineering is a highly controversial approach to the topic of climate change. Specifically, it's a set of proposed solutions to the problem of climate change, and as such, it relates quite closely to the concept of leverage points from systems thinking. Let's look at a simple model of climate change. As we saw before, climate change is all about the interaction of two processes. The first is energy striking the Earth from the sun, and the radiation of that energy back out into space. That's represented by this stock and flow structure documenting the flow of energy from the sun to the Earth and back out again into space. The temperature of the Earth will of course be a function of the amount of energy that accumulates in the system. Now, the rate at which that energy radiates back into space is a function of the amount of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, which is represented by this second stock and flow structure. This stock, concentration of greenhouse gases, will influence the rate at which radiation escapes the Earth. In other words, the more greenhouse gases, the more energy that will be trapped at the Earth's surface. Another way to say this is that there's an inverse relationship between the stock, greenhouse gases, and the flow of energy out of the system. What determines the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere? The carbon cycle, of course, and that balance between respiration by living things and the uptake of carbon dioxide by plants and algae through photosynthesis over time. To think about the carbon cycle in modern times, however, we have to add another flow, anthropogenic emissions, or the greenhouse gases that enter the atmosphere as a result of human activity. These are a major contributor to this dynamic. So we'll represent them by this additional flow called anthropogenic greenhouse gas production. The two major factors contributing to the flow of anthropogenic greenhouse gases are methane emissions from agriculture and CO2, and increasingly methane emissions, from the production and combustion of fossil fuels, such as coal, oil, and natural gas. So this system, you can see, is very simple, but it captures the major dynamics of climate change. And of course, we want to make this system work better. And in this case, working better means keeping the temperature from rising to a level that has negative impacts on human well-being. So to do that, we need to figure out how to manage this system. And from a systems thinking perspective, we need to begin looking for leverage points operating within this system. And of course, the first two are staring us right in the face: emissions from our energy and agricultural systems. These two factors represent a huge amount of leverage on this system. So we should just change those values. Lower emissions and eat less meat, right? Let's do that. Guys, you still there? I said let's just use less energy and drive less and eat less meat. What's the problem? The problem is that just because something is in a place where change would have a large effect on the system, that doesn't mean that it's a place where it's easy to make a change. And in fact, when we approach energy usage, we see that this is the case. Changing patterns of food consumption or energy use at the societal level run right up against the interests of some of the most powerful stakeholders in global society: agribusiness and the oil industry. And there's a lot of money at stake. And it's not much better with the diffuse stakeholders called the general population, where you're up against habits that are very deeply entrenched, deep within American society in our case. Cars are convenient. Hamburgers are delicious. And there are structural problems too, such as the fact that many American cities have been designed, in terms of their physical geography, their road infrastructure, around the idea of car travel being the way in which most people will get around most of the time. So now we know what the leverage points are, but we can see that it's very hard to apply the leverage that we have. So what do? Do we just give up?